my name is Mark, a Lineweaver. I decided to build a house in the Dominican Republic about 35 years ago. And so I started building it little by little. And now I'm running a vanilla farm here, which I really hadn't expected to do. You can see that maybe tomorrow or the next day, this one might be ready, probably in 2 days. And then to reveal up here, I'm going to push that up like that. See that flap coming up? That's actually the pollen. And so the story starts with me visiting a small farm down in Salcedo. We're walking through the farm, and I asked the guy, hey, what is that plant? It's something I hadn't seen before. And he says, that's vanilla. And I said, okay, vanilla. And so I guess in the way he was looking at me, in my interest in plants, he went over and he broke off a couple of cuttings about this long. And I said, well, obviously, I haven't got a clue what you do with this stuff. I said, what do you do with it? And he says, well, just stick it on the ground underneath the tree and put some leaves on it. And I said, okay. So I came up here on top of the mountain. I had no idea that, here we are on top of a mountain. I didn't know what the plant would like or not. So I threw it there and forgot about it, okay? And about 5 years later, wow, look at that. What is that? Okay, it covered the entire tree. It just grown and filled up the entire tree. And so I had a guy working with me, and I said, he can climb better than me. So I said, hey, why don't you go up there and see if you can find some vanilla beans? So he goes up there and he comes back with 100 beans that had been naturally pollinated, which is really good. So he came back down, he gave me the beans, and I, like a true artist, I put the beans in the glove compartment and forgot about it, went back to work. And about 2 weeks later, I opened the car door and bang, I get hit with this beautiful aroma of vanilla. And I said, oh yeah, I opened the glove compartment. The heat inside the car had given it a nice sweating and it actually killed him at the same time. And he says, wow, hey, this is good. So my next trip up here to the mountain, cut down the tree, took all that whole vanilla thing, cut it into cuttings. We got about 500 or 600. And we just started spreading them all around the mountain. And that's how we got started up here in what's called, Blue Mountain Forest vanilla. Loma Azul is the name of the actual mountain area here, Loma Azul, which is Blue Mountain. So I decided to take care, translate that in English, and we call it Blue Mountain Forest vanilla because we just grow the vanilla in natural forest conditions. And our first vines were planted probably in 93 or 94. And I had no idea what to do with it. So we just kept on growing, and we eventually, got the whole forest full of vanilla. And then sometime around 2015, 16, I decided, I didn't know how to pollinate. So, everybody thinks of a flower, you just stick a stick in there, rummage around, and you're gonna pollinate it. So I did that for a year and didn't get any beans. It was worthless. So then I said, okay, well, we got YouTube now, right? So I got onto YouTube and I looked at a pollinating video. Bam, we got success right away. So I taught my nephew how to pollinate, and we got our first crop the next year, about 160 kilos. So it was nice. And so, it was just a family thing, my wife, my kids, and him, we just walk around the farm doing everything we needed. And it was just a nice thing. And then at this time, there was a political and hurricane problem in Madagascar. And so the price of vanilla was up to $600. So when people heard about my farm, I got a lot of attention. So people were flying in to visit me and heard at the farm that people from Puerto Rico, Alan Chambers came from Florida. We're getting visitors from all over the place, wanted to know what we're doing here because we're kind of the first real vanilla farm in the Dominican Republic. We're heating up the beans to about 155 degrees. What that does is it kills the metabolism so that the bean will no longer keep maturing, and therefore it will not split. These are smaller beans, so we're only doing that for 2 minutes, but the larger beans we do for 3 minutes. Okay? So from here, see they're in there, and they're going to start the sweating process now. We keep them in coolers overnight before they go up on the roof. So here we're going to talk about these beans have been sweated, or they're in the process of sweating in the sun. Oh, maybe four hours a day up on the roof up there, and then at night we bring them in here in these bins so that they don't get wet. Okay, and so what I'm going to show you is when they're ready to stop sweating and enter the drying phase, where we reduce the humidity to about 22%. All right, so here's a bean it's recent, okay? So if you touch it, it's just total resistance. It's hard, okay? So feel that one. All right, you see that, like it doesn't give. Yep. All right, so then, okay, a little bit longer, okay, and you're gonna get that stage. It's a little bit softer. Yep. All right, and then, okay, here we go. This was almost ready, but there's still, for my it's too much resistance.
Right, but you can still see it.
Okay, and then when you get to this stage right here, they're really pliable, and they're closer to what I call the feeling of a raisin. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, and here's one here that's in its sweating process, and it was a split. Okay, so you can see its effect, and it doesn't have a chance to develop it yet. But that's what we're doing now, is selecting the ones that are ready to go down to the drying process. What he's doing, okay, he's rolling the vanilla beans. We do that with each one. 70% or 75% of the components that go into making the vanillin, okay, we have glucose vanillin. And so 70% of those components are in the shell, okay, the husk of the bean. And then the other 24% that go into making the vanillin are in the embryo, the bean, where the seeds are. By sweating them, we've broken down the molecular structure. And then now when you roll it, you're just giving it that last mix, okay? And so you've got, so the component, they're dynamic. They're moving around inside there. We've broken down the cell structure, and now they're being mixed a little bit before we set them out to dry. When you get a ripe bean, when you see, like you can see the tips of these are a little bit lighter than the general length of the bean, you want to take them up here with your thumb, press it against the thing so you make sure you get that end on it like that, okay? And it helps it.
Wait, can I see the end?
Yeah, it protects itself from more infections and mold. Okay, so you want to put pressure against this stalk, and when they're ripe, they actually come off easier. Put your hands up. There you go. I'm a director.
If you pollinate all the flowers on the top, and there's bigger ones on the bottom, that's how you get the hook beans. They'll grow over the other beans. Yeah, just harvested all these. You can see a couple we were late to, and you can just see how much it split there.
Wait, can you show me the split real quick?
Yeah, right here. This is a more extreme split.
Here, I'm gonna kind of get a close up
right
on
there,
that.
and I just made it worse.
Oh yeah.
But and here's some beans that were completely forgotten about. I mean, you could see a split on the green one. But
they smell good too.
They smell excellent.
Because the normal ones, they don't have an aroma. These ones do not have an aroma yet, so.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
It's not just that you pollinate the flower, it's the amount of pollen you get into the female part that determines the quality of the bean.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I would think just like any flower, if it's pollinated, you get a fruit. But in the case of vanilla, the more pollen you get in, the better quality of the bean.
Hi, so my name is Gina Empson, and I own and have the pleasure of cultivating the vanilla farm on Nevis, in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And my backstory is, well, in a way, I'm a tropical gal, because I was born in Africa, East Africa, and I spent my childhood in Hong Kong. But then I got sucked into the temperate zones up in Europe, where I went to college and spent 40 years being an accountant. Not really because I wanted to, but because my dad told me I needed to get off his payroll and do something that would give me a job, which it did, and I thank it for that, but it's not really where my heart was. So when my partner was looking to find a place where he could continue to practice, and he came across the Caribbean, it was absolutely, dream making for me, and I was getting close to selling the accounting firm. So the question was, what do I do on this wonderful tropical island? And I went back to my first love, which was botany, and the initial impetus for that was visiting Costa Rica with my daughter, who was teaching Spanish there and having a bit of a hard time. No, she was teaching English to Spanish people, I'll get it right. So I went to boost her a bit, and we visited a vanilla farm, and that was the initial germination of the idea.
My name is Jesse Wiley. I work here at Vanilla Paradise. I started here around 4 years ago in 2022. Right from the very beginning, I found myself putting down the first layer of coconuts, which is what the vanilla vines are growing in. And ever since then, I've just been learning as I go with everything that I've read and watched and seen. Just like documentaries like this is where we've kind of taken a lot of the information and being able to apply it to our own plants here. As of right now, 4 years down the road, we're getting our beans, so we're learning how to properly pollinate with 100% success rate, hopefully. Taking care of the vines is a big task here, walking up and down the rows, checking them, making sure they're not growing in the wrong direction or trying to grow on each other, since it is intensive agriculture here for the vines. They're in close quarters, so we have to make sure that they stay in their place, and that's a huge thing that we have to do, going around with some twine and some clippers, carrying out our duties for the plants. All right, so we're gonna be tipping one of these plants. We're gonna be going up and down these rows, and tipping is the removal of the apex, which is this part here. This is the growing part of the plant, where all of your new leaves, your new nodes, your new stems are coming from. And we're doing this in order to stress out the plant, so to induce flowers. Now, when we remove this part, this has all the growing parts of the plant, the growing cells, and when this gets removed, it basically tells the plant, I just got inhibited, I just got stopped, what's wrong? And it will begin to, say, I might not survive, I don't know what's happened. So it's gonna start putting out flowers. So an apex is the growing part of the plant, the very top of the plant, where all the new leaves come from, the new nodes and the new stems are coming from, which is going to be extending the plant's length. And now a bud would be where the flowers are going to be coming from, and essentially, the flowers, then the beans, and that's what we're trying to keep. We're trying to keep the buds and remove the apexes. If the plant already has buds, we're gonna leave the apexes so it'll continue to grow new vine for next year. But as of right now, there's no buds here, so we are going to remove all of the apexes to induce that flowering process. You can see how rounded it is, or even this guy it's very rounded at the top there. And that's very clearly a bud now, but when it's first coming out of the node, you're just gonna see that very top and you're gonna say, okay, that is a bud, not an apex. Meanwhile, this apex is quite sharp and pointy at the top. So I know, okay, that is an apex, and our job right now is to differentiate and make sure we don't remove this, because that is 4 years of waiting for this bud to come out, so we don't wanna get rid of it just yet. All right, so we're gonna be preparing a cutting. And the first thing we're gonna do when we prepare a cutting is remove all of the aerial roots. Give it at least 2 or 3 millimeters, just so it's not right up against the thing and it leaves some space that this dries out. And then we're gonna want to find out which side this is growing upwards or downwards. We wanna find the bottom and the top. This one's quite obvious because it has an apex, so we know that's the top. Because when we get to the bottom, we will remove the first 3 leaves, because these 3 nodes that had the leaves on it are what's gonna be under the mulch, the growing medium, and that's where all of our terrestrial roots that are gonna support this new cutting will be. And that is how we will prepare a cutting. So I'll just remove the rest of the aerial roots. And then after doing this, we will write down on 2 of the leaves the date that it was collected from one of the shade houses and what shade house it was collected from. And then we let these guys sit for 2 weeks, let them dry out, cauterize their wounds, and then they'll be ready to plant.
And so thinking about what I could do on island and doing my research during COVID, it was, let's try vanilla. So in the research, everything seemed to stack up, right latitude, right altitude, right precipitation, right humidity. The question was, why wasn't there any vanilla on island? And I was able to answer that question later. But in my research, I was able to go down to Reunion Island, which is sort of the cradle, the birthplace of vanilla, in the sense that that was where pollination was found. And I was going to import vanilla from Reunion Island until in Nevis they said to me that I needed to pay $100 for each cutting to do the phytosanitaire. And I thought, okay, that business plan is out the window. And almost exactly the same time, I was talking to a lady about vanilla. I was doing a lot of talking at the time, and she said, oh, vanilla grows on island. So that was total serendipity. And we went to find it, and yes, vanilla was growing on island. And I was able to take cuttings. They were really little at the beginning, maybe just 3 nodes. But that was the start of the farm, and now we have 3,500 orchids. We're going up to 4,000 because we've got 8 shade houses with about 500 plants each. And it's totally a vanilla paradise. The plants are growing fast in front of our eyes, faster than we thought was possible. So initially I had thought that I needed to plant the vanilla higher up, but when I had it growing pretty well in my garden, I thought this could work. So I was able to find some land real close to the house. And again, by chance, right next to the farm was the heritage site, the Hamilton sugar mill estate, ruins in fact. And I was almost unaware of them because they were very overgrown. But when I saw the potential of this, it's got a beautiful windmill, and then there's the steam mill with a fantastic chimney. So you've got the 3 power sources, the animal, wind, and steam. And there was the ruins of the general manager's house, the manager who ran it until 1952. And so I asked the government if they would lease it to me, and they have. So we've been able to build a little cottage in a Caribbean style, with using the vanilla colors of green and yellow. And so it's wonderful for coffee breaks, but it's also a meeting point for visitors to the farm, and allows us to showcase our vanilla products. I had initially imagined putting a little cafe or a little place on the farm, but with the heritage site right next door, it's just too good. Because what we do 3 days a week, we run vanilla tours, which are quite comprehensive and extensive because they're 2 hours. So we taste and no, I would say we smell vanilla, and we work out what vanilla is used for, and we touch vanilla. Then we go into the shade houses and talk about how vanilla is grown, what the risks are, and what we need to be careful about, and what vanilla likes and what it doesn't like as an orchid. And then we go back to the cafe where we taste vanilla in various forms. We talk about the history from the Aztecs and Henry Cortez through to the discovery of hand-pollination with Edmund Albius in 1841. And we drink something that we call Montezuma's elixir, which is vanilla and cocoa and honey, which is what the Aztecs would give to their warriors before they went off to fight. And one glass of this could keep a warrior going all day. So we taste that and compare it with cocoa without vanilla. And we have a couple of vanilla treats where people can sample what vanilla is like, expressing itself in desserts and ice cream and even savories. So if you might be interested to visit us, of course, we'd be really happy to welcome you. And you can find out all about our story, what we're doing, and if you would like to sign up for a tour, then that's lovely. The website is vanillaparadisenevis.com, and my name is Gina Empson.